where do y'all want to begin unraveling this? Is what sticks out to you? One thing that sticks out to me, and I want to just make everybody aware of this, and I'll give this away at the end, but what's the theme? What's the common theme? There's one word that we're all just seeking for. What is it? So keep that in the back of your mind. Try to figure out what that is as we're having this conversation, because we're all one. I mean, we're all one. Anybody want to start? Any just questions or comments for one another?
I think honestly the feeling that we're all looking for is probably like the acceptance and love. And we're also like angry, and the justification to be angry. The justification of either like pointing the finger at either you did it or like, no, you're in the wrong. Like, I think that we're all looking for a reason to be upset, but also a reason to understand why this is happening and what's going on, really.
So what was it for you that you said you didn't like who you were becoming? You know, was it the anger that just had a hold of you? What was it for you that prompted you to see this differently?
I think it was seeing myself become like, yeah, incredibly angry, not only at myself, but the world. I mean, the people closest to me have watched me go through probably the angriest and like most, like I hated myself and I hated everyone else around me. And I didn't understand why I wasn't accepted by my mom, and why, like, you know, why was this man so much better than me? And then I started, after she had passed on, I started seeking validation in men and women. And, you know, I started becoming my mom and being like, well, I don't want to be alone right now. And it felt uncomfortable to be with myself, because then if I was alone with my thoughts, I would have to reflect on the fact that, like, hey, dude, you're doing the same thing. Like, you know, you're looking for your mom and all these other people. You're looking for that love that you feel that you didn't have. And then having to like really have that hard conversation with myself that, like, you know, I am enough for me. And that is something that I wish my mom had seen in herself as well, because she wasn't going to die alone no matter what. Like, even if I'm 2,000 miles away, I still was there and I still wanted to be there. And, you know, like, for her, it was the validation, in my belief, it was the validation of a man, because she had an incredibly hard childhood. Like, her father abandoned her. She was beat by her stepdad. Like, she had a really hard life, especially involving men. So to feel loved and accepted, I think that's what she was seeking. And then thusly I was seeking that in other people, to like find my mom, find that acceptance that I needed, when, you know, it was there for me. And to like kind of let that wash over me and be like, okay, I don't need to be this angry anymore. And, you know, maybe I can have compassion for somebody that I felt betrayed me in that moment, because, you know, I was 15. Like, in my mind, like, I'm still figuring out the world, and this person who's supposed to be there for me and guide me, like wasn't. And that was a really lonely feeling. And then, I mean, I believe in our conversation, you know, your mom's love never leaves you. And there's like little things that I find throughout my day and throughout my life that just tell me that it's gonna be okay, and she's still here. And no matter how alone I'm feeling, she's always gonna be right there, still loving me, even at times when it feels like I can't even love myself.
Absolutely. And I think that's what Cheryl was sharing, that it doesn't even matter what her, I mean, like y'all could commit a murder and we would still like just have this amazing love for you, because it's just what a parent does. There's just no way to not have that. You brought up the term cognitive distortion, and I never heard that term before. I had to text Dr. Ruth and say, do you use this term in your profession? And she said, yeah, I do. So I've used the spiritual term for that is just, we create illusions. But cognitive distortion, I mean, I really like that term. So will you just, in your words, expand on that? So like, what's your cognitive distortion? Maybe what were your mom's cognitive distortions?
I think that my mom's cognitive distortions would have to be like, it was like for her black and white thinking, where it was either this way or that way. So she either was with a man or she was going to die alone. And there was no in between. So she couldn't necessarily see like the love that lay in the interim between those things. Like the fact that she wasn't alone. She had my grandma, she had her sisters and her brothers, and like she had me. She didn't need the validation of just some random dude who's like, oh yes, you're beautiful, or yes, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Like I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I wanted to spend the rest of her life with her. And I didn't get to do that because it felt like she was always thinking like I was either, I'm going to be loved by a man or I'm going to die alone. And that was never truly the case. And I think that I have this like along with the cognitive distortion, I think I have the cognitive fallacy of like almost doing the same thing of like either my mom chose me and she loved me or she didn't. And that's another thing that I caught myself doing was like it's either this way or it's that way. And having to unlearn those patterns and those things that like I'm either protecting my mom or she's getting abused. Like
yeah. You know, it's been like the most interesting for me, and Cheryl, I'd like to know if you've experienced this as well. What's different than the romantic relationship with, you know, a man or a woman, and then the relationship with your child is you believe that relationship is always going to be there. You believe as a mom, as a parent, you believe you're always going to have that love. And it's almost like you don't have to do anything for it. You know, it's just that child is an extension of you, and you grew up witnessing them you were the center of their world, and you knew they were the center of your world. And so you had this 2 decades almost, let's call it 2 decades of this feeling that that's the way it was always going to be. So we don't take into account that people need to break away to experience their own freedom, their own life. I don't know if this surprises you. Like when I did a lot of public speaking in schools, I would always tell everyone how my first husband and I brought cellular to Colorado. We lived in Florida at the time. We brought cellular to Colorado in the year 1993. And I always would get this hand raised by one of the students that said, you mean cellular didn't always exist? And this is going to surprise you. Like, you know, you're supposed to exercise and work out, right? You know, you're supposed to take care of your body, right? Everybody knows this, knows the importance of moving your body and taking care of it now. Well, did you know that the movement for taking care of our bodies and exercising, that didn't begin until the mid-80s, 1980s, with Olivia Newton-John. She's the one who brought it onto the scene, and Jane Fonda. They're the ones who brought exercise. It didn't always exist. So the point is the evolution. My parents and your parents and our grandparents, they didn't have the tools that we have. You know, the internet, you know, they didn't have what we have now. We've all evolved. We've all had to do the best that we have with the environment that we were raised in.
So I grew up in a family, you know, 6 kids, my parents, no one said I love you. And I always said I love you to my girls as they were growing up. And I just, like you said, I just assumed that they loved me. And before the estrangement, you know, both daughters always said, I love you. And then during the estrangement, the first time I ever felt, wow, I don't think she loves me. And then during the second, and then we got back together and it was, I love you, I love you, I love you, you know, on both sides. And then with this latest one, which is going on 2 years, I've had many major surgeries, and both daughters had always been by my side. And this time, it was during this last October, and it got really bad. And And I couldn't believe she knew about it from my other daughter, didn't reach out. And I just felt, wow, she doesn't love me. And then I got flowers in the hospital, which I thought were from somebody else. There was no card. And someone had said they were sending something. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. And I called the person to thank them, and it wasn't from them. And so my husband called the florist and was like, can you tell me who? And they said, oh, and they mentioned the first name of my daughter, not knowing that she had explicit instructions not to give her name. She wanted them sent with me never knowing who they were from. Oh, I think because my sister had told her she couldn't believe that she wasn't whatever. So she found out. So my first thought when they said the name, I thought, my God, she does love me. And it was like an amazing healing, I started healing. But then she got so upset that I had found out, and, then told my sister, she would never, ever do that again. But so I have to keep reminding myself through all of this that she does love me. And you talked about the overall feeling, the underlying feeling through, on this. To me, it's compassion, forgiveness, and love, which is how I view everything now.
But what are all of us? What is the core theme that all of us were kind of going after and thriving to have?
For me, it's forgiveness.
And when you were like, well, you really didn't break away from your parents, but when you were breaking away from your ex-husband, what is it that you wanted?
Freedom.
We wanted freedom from those constraints called our childhood, called our life. And that's just part of growth and breaking away and finding ourselves. And unfortunately, it looks like breaking away from the people who love us the most.
When you spoke about your daughters, it's kind of the reverse with mine. So my oldest is the quiet, always well-behaved, would put herself in timeout, just so quiet, reserved, very, hesitant to talk. Just my youngest, which is my estranged daughter, came out, like a spitfire, and just wanted to do things her own way. And, still to this day, but so a force of nature, and just, soaking up everything. And I did parent them differently, and had the same, and always when she was talking to me, she would say, it's okay. You have a favorite, your favorite is the older one, and I'm dad's favorite. But then it became very, she would say, you definitely love her more than me. And you never gave her rules. So my oldest daughter would never go out. I would be pushing her, go have fun, go out, stay out. You don't have to be home at 10 o'clock. The other one would, break every curfew, stay out all night. And, I'd get calls from parents and, other things. And so I do believe you do have to parent different personalities differently. But I can see where that to her. And she recently confided in a female friend of mine that she felt that she was not enough. And in our, course and the levels we do, you're always saying to yourself, I am enough. I am enough. And she feels that she is not enough. So I absolutely see why now she has to be on this journey.
Aaliyah, what was that like for you as far as feeling? I mean, you already said you always felt like an outsider. I felt like, as a little kid, I felt like the black sheep in my family, but it must have really been amplified for you.
Yeah, I always didn't feel accepted. So that's why it made it so much easier to leave and not talk, because I was like, well, I guess I need to go find my own family and find people who actually accept me for the way who I am, not be around people who always want me to be like someone else or didn't even know who I was deep down. So
There were 3 adopted kids and then 2 biological.
Yeah.
Did you feel like the 3 adopted kids were the ones who were always not the favorites, or just you?
No, all of us. We had our own little pack. We're actually super close. So, and we've all struggled with estrangement. My brother went 10 years without talking to my mom. He went the longest. So it's easy. But we always had each other, right? So, and we've all helped each other get through it. So that's like, I was the first to start talking to my mom again, and then he eventually came back around. So,
did you know that we all actually experience abandonment? I mean, you had the mother load because you were adopted. You know, that's the very first thing on the list. But we all actually experience abandonment. And I came across this list a while ago, and I just want to read it to everybody because it's what Cheryl brought up, as far as we have so much work to do on the inside to remind ourselves that we're enough. Because shame is just something that, unfortunately, we come into the world knowing before our parents, even have the opportunity to screw us up. We come in knowing shame. If in utero, now we know that in utero, we experience the emotions of our parents. We feel our environment. We're very little spiritual beings at that point. We experience everything still. So if in utero, you're feeling like you're not wanted, you're already experiencing that shame and that sense of abandonment because you're not being welcomed. Like another mouth to feed, or, I can't afford this. How am I going to have another child? And that was a big part of my guilt with losing my second daughter, is my marriage was kind of on the brink, and I had a baby, and I was pregnant again. And so for 9 months, I kept saying, God, please don't let me be single with 2 kids. Don't let me be alone with 2 kids. Well, prayer answered. So I had an incredible amount of guilt for just even carrying that. But here's the ways that we experience abandonment. So like I mentioned, if you were ever an unwanted pregnancy, did your parent ever leave, go on vacation, or have they passed on? Were you ever left alone during an illness or injury? Did you have a caregiver who was physically or emotionally absent? So Jillian experienced that because her mom was sick. I know throughout raising my daughters, I've dealt with a lot of illnesses. I was nearly in a wheelchair in my mid-20s. So they, had to endure that as well. I went through a lot of health challenges. And then, of course, were you adopted? Did your parents divorce, remarry, or have infidelity? Then you'd experience abandonment. Were you ever sent away to camp? Or your grandparents? Wow. Was your parent chronically ill? And of course, did you experience abuse or other emotional trauma? So again, it just goes back to the human journey, the resilience of the human spirit, truly. And is it all supposed to be this way? Estrangement feels like such a thing that's not supposed to be happening right now, and mostly because of the internet. And I want to talk about that a little bit too, because I think that's what's fueling it, so much of it. With 70 million people in the United States alone experiencing family estrangement, Did you know if we all just quit talking about it and quit feeding it, it wouldn't exist? I mean, we don't even have to have the conversation anymore, that our thoughts create our reality. It's been proven so many times through science. We just don't even have to go there and have that conversation. But we're feeding it and we're keeping it alive, and we witness the growth of it. And, you know, we've all shared, was it estrangement? Did you go in with the intention of estrangement, or did you just go in with the intention of wanting to find yourself, wanting to experience the freedom, putting yourself first, choosing yourself? Comments?
I was choosing myself for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely was. As I said earlier, like, it felt like, I mean, I guess in a way I did kind of both just go into it choosing myself, but also with the intention of like, I am not going to talk to you until this is resolved, you know, until you can also choose me, or until like this gets better. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I fall on both sides of that party line, just simply because it was an active decision to no longer be in my mom's life, if that was the way it was going to be, because I wasn't going to be treated like that anymore.
What would you have done differently, if anything?
At this point, I mean, I was 15 years old. If I'd known then what I know now, like, I'm sure things wouldn't have like escalated to the point that it was. But she tried to physically fight me and my grandma. It was filled with vitriol, and you know, I know it was because she was feeling abandoned, and at that same time I was also feeling abandoned, and so we were like just feeding off of each other and like not really understanding one another. Like, no, I'm not abandoning you, I'm just choosing me, and you're not abandoning me, you're just choosing him. And like, in the way we're both feeling abandoned, and that's like a burden I've also had to carry throughout my entire life, is like, you know, I mean, I've expressed this to my family and like the multiple breakdowns we've had when we've talked about it, is that, you know, I went so long believing that everybody just leaves me, and like my thoughts created my reality. And then all of a sudden I was just this negative person and nobody wanted to be around me. So yeah, of course everybody's going to leave me, because they're like, okay, we don't want to talk to her right now because all she's going to do is like bitch and complain.
Yeah. You mentioned a time you and your mom had a thing that kind of played out online a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that again?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously with my generation, like we've grown up with the internet. Like, I remember I was at the very cusp of like being a Zoomer. So like, or like Gen Z, or like whatever you want to call it. So I still remember having to like make sure nobody was going to call before I got on the internet, and not really knowing what the internet was. But now, like, as it's progressed, like, it's just a part of my life. Like, it is what it is. And even though I like, my dad had taken my cell phone away because I lived with him now, after the whole falling out happened, like, him and my wonderful stepmom took me in. And I remember like all I had access to really was like my email when I would hang out with her at her work after school. And I remember getting like these messages from my mom online that would just like even though I had her blocked on Facebook, she would make another one. And then even though I didn't have access to my Facebook, I had access to my email. And I would get her messages that would come through and just be like telling me how, you know, she hopes that I'm happy with the outcome of this, and how dare I hate her this much. And, you know, she hopes I have a happy life with my asshole dad, you know, or that, you know, she didn't even really want me, and, you know, just what a mistake I was making. And she would just send me the most awful stuff. And I realized that that's like, now at that moment, I was like, God, my mom really freaking hates me. Like, what is happening? What did I do? But now, like, I see that it was just pain and her lashing out. And like, I have that same unfortunate quality about me where when I'm in pain, I want to lash out at people and let them know how much I'm hurting too, because I don't think you really understand exactly how much I'm hurting right now. So I want you to feel how much I hurt. And now I realize, like, oh, that's what my mom was doing. And so like, I just couldn't escape it though. Like, I would open my email and it'd be there. Even if I put it in my, like, said it was spam, it would still be there. And like, words, you can't take them back, but especially online, like, reading the sentence that my mom had sent me is burned into my brain. Like, you can't get that off your screen. Even if you delete it, like, it's still out there. You could still find it.
Yeah. Wow. And you know, that's not a Jillian thing. That's a human thing. And my experience with what you just described, and it's actually got a term, everything has a term. It's the mother wound. And we're reading a lot online that the mother wound just means you have a narcissistic mother. That's not what it is at all. And so I want everybody to listen, listening to this, to really, one, see if it was there for you. I'm going to share how it played out for me. Your needs did not get met, Jillian, Elia, Cheryl. When we were children, our needs did not get met for the sole reason we were raised by human beings. That was the reason. And they were trying to do the best job they could, given the tools they were given, which were broken and non-existent. And they just were non-existent. So we're all wounded children coming into this world, moving into our 20s. Now we're on our own trying to figure out, okay, I don't want to be like those people that I just left this house. I know I don't want to be like those people. My mom was so negative. My parents fought all the time. I don't want that to be my life. And so when I had that conversation with my daughter that one day, that initially it just started us talking about like tea and couches. But it quickly realized that we were not talking about tea and couches anymore. And something very bizarre happened. And part of healing is self-honesty. Part of love is self-honesty. It's always where we need to begin. So initially I didn't know what was happening, and I was in denial by the whole thing. But then when I looked back and started healing myself and going through my journey, I was able to look at it very differently. So that day we had our falling out. I was saying things to her like, you do this for everybody else, but never for me. Everybody else gets the best parts of you, but not me. I was talking to my daughter from a wounded child point of view. And in that moment, I was making her responsible for everything I didn't get as a child. Because, as I mentioned earlier, we just think our kids are going to be there and they have to put up with our stuff, because they did for 20 years. They saw us at our worst. They saw us in and out of just being our absolute worst. Sickness, health, good, bad, healthy, unhealthy. They saw it all, and they loved us. And we got so accustomed to having that love, because there's nothing more amazing than having that unconditional love from this beautiful child who accepts everything about you, until they don't, because now they have to break away to find themselves. So that day that my mother wound became so activated and I was taking everything out on her, and what was odd? I knew it was happening. I was witnessing it. And if you follow the work of Eckhart Tolle, he calls it the pain body. And it's just the pain body has to surface sometimes. And it's like a psychic parasite, and it has to be fed. And that day, my pain body was so active, and I took all of it out on her in that moment. And she's crying, and I'm yelling, and I'm pushing and pushing, and I couldn't stop it. I mean, the voice even said, Lisa, knock it off. But I couldn't stop it. Well, she was going back to her first year in law school after doing law school at home for 2 years because of COVID. I mean, now we're finding out how difficult it was for all of us to re-engage in life. We went through some things that we don't even know that we went through during COVID, the mental effects that had on us. And now we're coming back into the world. And that's where she was in that moment. And her fiance for the first 2 years, who lived with her, he cooked and cleaned. He did everything for her. So all she had to do was study. Well, in her last year, he had to go back to a different state to do another certification with his job. So she was going to be alone in that last year. So she must have just been horrified, and going back into school and going back into reality. And here I am, her mom, the one that she called every week, just let her have it. So, but do I see that I mean, it hurts me because the last person I would ever hurt is this sweet child. But did it have to happen? It did. Because it brought me here. It brought me here. And I know my daughter and I are going to connect again. I mean, I know, and I believe it's even shifting right now because I'm hearing a lot of things that are happening in her life. So I know it's shifting. But perhaps everything in our life happens for a reason. And I've talked to a lot of hurting parents and a lot of parents who've gone through this process that Cheryl and I have gone through to get to the other side, to say, I wasn't showing up as who I am. I was just living this mundane day in and day out life. And it was kind of boring and this and that. And this whole thing shook me to my core, got me to be somebody that I know I am, but I just became complacent. I wasn't bringing this part of myself to the table because I didn't have to. COVID made me very complacent on my spiritual practice, everything else. I was just digesting Netflix series, watching the violence, everything else, and eating the crap. And I just completely lost myself through that whole thing. And so getting back on track with this again, honestly, my daughter gave me the biggest gift because this is who I am and this is my happiness. And when I see her, the only thing I'm going to say to her is, tell me everything. Tell me everything I missed. What was it like graduating from law school with honors? Oh my gosh, this little kid who wouldn't do her homework, who hated school. She graduated from law school with honors. And what was it like the day you got married? Were you scared? Were you nervous? Tell me everything. That's my homecoming with my daughter. It's not going to be a beating. It's not going to be a walking on eggshells. And it wasn't always this way over the past few months. I mean, I had to do some serious work on myself to get to this place. And I brought some other people along with me who are having the same experiences. It's always our work that we have to do. It's always an inside job. And Aaliyah and I have both talked about how hard it is to still talk up to our moms because they're negative. It's still hard for me too, you know. But she's 80 and she's not going to do the work, and I will. So I'm going to be the one to carry that torch and forgive her and look at it as it's my spiritual practice and it's my chance to bump up my level of consciousness when I talk to her and show up with nothing but love for her. And if I'm getting annoyed and irritated that she's going on a rampage and negativity, then I'm just going to hold the space for her. I'm going to allow her to do it because she needs to do it, because she's hurting for whatever reason. And I can allow her to talk to me about that without it taking me down. It's always our work that we have to do. And when you show up to something like this, like all of you have already talked about, you knew it was your work. You knew it was up to you. And we're here because Aaliyah said something to me one day that changed everything. When I was asking her questions about her estrangement that was 2 years, and mine and my daughter's has been just over 2 years. And we talked about doing this event. And I wasn't going to do it for a while because I was really afraid that you guys would just think that it was going to be another opportunity to give the parents a beating for everything that we'd done wrong. And frankly, everybody's just been through enough of working on yourself and doing that whole thing. I mean, it's been very hard for everybody to get a steady dose of that, to hear that it's all our fault. And we should be writing these letters and accepting fault for everything. We can't do that. You know, it's not the path to, that's just more guilt and shame that we pour on top of ourselves. But what you said to me that day, Aaliyah, really gave me hope and changed. And it changed the way I started reaching out to my daughter. And Do you remember? Can you share what it was? Do you remember what you said?
To never give up. To keep trying, because like at least if they know there's a lifeline on the other side, they're still able, that door is still open. So never slam that door shut. That's why I came back, because I always knew that my mom loved and accepted me. It wasn't, I just needed to go on my own journey for a while.
And you said something, because I remember saying to you, well, you said you remembered that the ball was in your court.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you were going to open that door again, the ball was always in your court.
Right.
And I said to you, but my daughter blocked me on everything. You remember what you said?
Mm-hmm.
You enlightened me, as a millennial would, that even though I was blocked on her phone, one day when she unblocks me, she's going to get all those messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I started texting her that day. And I text her, once or twice a week now, to say, thinking about you today like I do every day. I love you so much. I missed you so much. Sometimes I share memories. And it's been the most wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm not going to get a response because I'm blocked. But for me, it's just been me validating that love that I have for her, no matter what, because that's who I am. That's my love. And I don't ever want to give that up.
Right.
So I appreciate you telling me that, because it really did change. And I hope that, I know everybody who's listening isn't really where I am because of, if you haven't done the work. And I want to extend the invitation to everybody to join us. I'll talk a little bit more about the course later, but Aaliyah and I have been creating a landing page to kind of get this ready. And we're going to relaunch it. Everyone who's already completed it, who's listening, is going to take it a second time, because we're going to go a layer deeper, heal more wounds. But it is about healing. And the more that we heal and go on this journey, and we've heard, Jillian and Aaliyah, they're doing their work too. They are. Every generation is doing their work. And we can't at this point expect to come back and have this healed conversation, because it's not going to be that way. But you can heal you, and then you don't have to worry about what to say, what to do, walking on the eggshells, because it becomes non-existent once you heal your wounds. But it's the only way to do that. And before I share the details of the course and how you can sign up and join us, as we do talk regularly in our communities, I want to share a book with all of you. It's a brand new book. It's called The Age of the Heart. It's called Sebastian, by Sebastian Blakesley. I want to read a couple of things, because like I already said, we're supposed to be here. This is just the catalyst. It's the catalyst to get us to change, because I think we all are fully aware that we're living in a world that's changing rapidly. And the advantage that Cher and I had, Aaliyah and Jillian, is that the world was a very different place for us. It was in a way easier. It was in a way more predictable. And in a way it was hidden from us because we didn't have the internet. We didn't really know what was going on with politics ever. That was always a good thing. But I think we have to look at this as, this is our calling, this is our awakening. And more books like this are coming up quite rapidly. So I want to leave us on this before I share the details of the course, for those of you who want to do the course with us. Okay. And by the way, the theme for all of us today has been freedom. And isn't that what everything that's happening in our world is about right now? Freedom to vaccinate or not vaccinate. Freedom to be on the left or on the right. Whatever side we're on, we're thinking it's the other side that's going to take away our freedom. We're all just fighting for this freedom, okay? And so our kids are too. Everyone is just really trying to figure out this life right now. So here's a couple of excerpts from the book. In a sense, we can consider the age of the heart to be the last phase of healing of the universe. This is the reason more and more healers will be seen, as well as people with the desire to heal themselves and others. In no other era in the history of creation has a healing of both bodies and spirits been more relevant than in these times, because the universal consciousness has jumped to the last phase of the restoration of creation. This means that the traumatic experience of separation, which created the body of trauma that everyone experiences, including all beings that inhabit the world, will finish healing. Naturally, for this to be possible, it must be brought to light, which is itself a part of healing. Just as peace will be the signature and seal of the age of the heart, unity will be its foundation. Day after day, you will see more signs of holiness, inclusion, and appreciation of others. Even the systems of production, work, and government will be transformed in this new world that we call the age of the heart. Beloveds from all corners of the world will not perish. The catastrophes of which you have heard so many times will not happen. Love watches over everything and everyone. The consciousness of humanity is increasingly anchored. This means that present and future humanity are not exactly the same humanity that once walked the earth. The wake-up call to love is softer than the faintest summer breeze, more tender than a beautiful snowflake. At the same time, it carries the power that creates life and sustains the existence of the universe. Love always respects freedom. Love always respects freedom. This is why everyone's timing and process to become conscious of and to respond to the invitation of love, to live in the truth, is respected. Heaven can wait because it knows that even in waiting, there is love, holiness, and perfection. Respecting the freedom of the soul is an act of perfect love and thereby holy. It's not a Christian book or a religious book. It's a spiritual book. I'm not Christian or religious. I'm spiritual. And I just believe that this is a wake-up call for all of us. And as long as we're anchored in the hating one another and the blaming and the pointing fingers and being victims, we cannot create a change. We cannot. So it's just important that we all take the step that we can take to do that. Now, I hope those of you who are listening are absolutely inspired by this today and are just ready to go out and do something. Every single segment of our population is hurting, and they need your help. I know there's a lot of healers on this call and life coaches, and they always come to me and say, I'm a life coach, but I just don't have the strength. It's like, no, because you have to put on your own oxygen mask first. You need support before you can help others. And that's what our community is providing. How much would you pay for your freedom from this pain? How much is that worth? I mean, it's a few weeks. We're going to do it in 20 weeks. We all did it in 6 months. We're going to try to do it in 5 months. It might be faster and sooner for some of you. But we're going to do it together as a group. Week by week, we will meet. You will do the course on your own. You will do the healing work on your own. The reason this is so effective is because of the shame that you need to dislodge. And you will never share your shame with a therapist, a counselor, or a coach. You will never, and you shouldn't. That's why it's called shame. It's too shameful. You will not share it with your best friend, your spouse. Nobody will ever be able to share their shame. So we just carry it around because we think it's normal, and it's not. And when you go through this process, some of the things seem really hokey, and I thought so too, but they work for some strange reason. and then it's just gone. And I can't even tell you what I was harboring for so many years, believing that it made me so unworthy because it's gone. And that's the only reason I can now even put my face with estrangement, because we all know there's so much shame in this, but even that doesn't exist anymore. So just keep that in mind. How much is your freedom worth? And I'm going to post it in the chat. And like I said, I will also send you an email afterwards if you want to join the course. If anyone is experiencing a financial hardship, there's a place at the bottom to reach out to me so we can talk about that. Don't let money be the deterrent for not joining us and taking this course. Recently, one of our favorite community members, and I know she was on the call earlier and she had to go, but we joke that she's the enlightened one. And the reason she's so enlightened is because she's so humble. And we talk a lot about narcissism. I know somebody brought up that question. We talk a lot about narcissism. Narcissism is just another word for the ego, and we all have it. We all need to reconcile with that and get rid of the wound that exists behind it. But this person in our community just recently, she's getting ready to start level 4, which is the love and the peace. And she came back after spending a few weeks at home with her family of origin. And she just said, I've regressed. I've completely regressed. I think I have to just take the course over and start over in level 1. She said, I just can't even believe how much I've regressed. And so we all got on our weekly call together. I said, nope, you have not regressed. That is just life showing you exactly what you need in this moment to raise your consciousness to the next level. And then she understood what her son was going through, how hard it is for him to come home and be with her when he's trying so hard to become someone different. Because the same thing just happened to her when she went home. And there's a line in the course of, you think you're so enlightened, just go home for the weekend. Those are words by Ram Dass. And she texted me that because I told her, I said, I just want you to watch level 3 again. And then I want you to keep moving into level 4. You don't have to start over. And she texted me after she got to that line and she said, okay, I'm the poster child for you think you're so enlightened, just go home for the weekend. That's how hard it is to break free from those chains of our family of origin. But it has to be this way. It has to be this way in order for us to break away, find our freedom, and individuate. And right now, the biggest intention and the biggest hope that I could hold for all of us is just to raise your consciousness, do your work, allow your kids the space to go find themselves, and make it possible for them to return home, like Aaliyah has said, and like I have said, to where when they have that conversation with us, we can be more conscious and present. And now they can look forward to talking to us and not have to feel like they have to carry the burden of doing our work. That's really all they want. And you don't even have to worry about reaching out to them and letting them know that you're doing all this fantastic work and now you're enlightened and they can come back and everything will be fine. It doesn't work that way. The universe does not work that way. Trust the process. Trust the process. So there's a shift, and I didn't have to do anything. I just had to work on me. I just have to get to the place to where I'm ready to accept my daughter back 100%. That's my only job, is to get to that place. And you better believe the universe is going to do the rest. Well, we are at exactly 2 hours, which we tried to keep this at. And we want you all to know we're going to continue these roundtables every 3rd Saturday of the month, and we'll make sure that you're invited. And if you join us on the course and in our community, and eventually we want to also have you participate in this, we would look forward to that. Ladies, sisters in estrangement, my dear friends, is there anything that you all want to add or say in closing? I appreciate you so much.
Just thank you for having me here, and thanks to everybody for, being open-minded to listen to our side of it. It's not all hate and anger. We're hurting too, and we love you just as much, and we're just as scared.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm just feeling so grateful and so much love and so much compassion. Thank you.
But I'm so grateful to have this opportunity, and hearing your guys' side of the story really helped me just even more want to talk to my mom and just keep this journey going, because it's worth it. And we all went through some stuff. So just knowing that and just loving through the pain. So I really took a lot away from it today.
And we're going to be sharing this with our communities. I mean,
Yeah.
we've already talked about that. We're going to be sharing this within our communities. It's going to reach different generations. We encourage all of you to please share these roundtable events with all ages. And as we go along, we just hope to get more generations who are willing to listen to this conversation and eventually participate. And on our next call, we have another announcement. Leah and I are putting together something else, but that's a big surprise. We're going to save that for then. So we hope you'll join us. But thank you. I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you so much.